If you look at the mainstream financial headlines today, the United States economy seems to be firing on all cylinders. I mean, the stock market is sitting at all-time highs, and the Federal Reserve's inflation strategy, well, it appears to be working. On the surface, life is good, but underneath that shiny veneer, there is some massive trouble brewing. While everyone is distracted debating the next interest rate cut, there's a very real, very massive credit crisis bubbling right under our noses. So today, in this explainer, we're going to look past the loud headlines and expose the quiet, structural reality of how America is literally drowning in debt.
Okay, let's dive into this. We have a highly structured roadmap today. 1. The trillion-dollar illusion. 2. Uncle Sam's playbook. 3, 4, and 5. The good, bad, and ugly of household debt. And finally, 6. Financing the present. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. The trillion-dollar illusion. Surface economy versus hidden reality. And this brilliantly illustrates our current disconnect. If we look past the loud mainstream narratives, we see two totally different pictures. On the left side, you've got the surface economy. You know, the stuff everyone brags about at dinner parties. Record high stocks, easing inflation. But then, look over on the right side. That is the hidden reality. We have record high household and national debt brewing. The so-called economic growth that everybody's celebrating right now is actually heavily fueled by a consumer debt crisis that's been quietly building while everyone was looking the other way.
Section 2. Uncle Sam's Playbook. The macro threat.
To really understand where the everyday American's borrowing behavior comes from, we have to zoom all the way out to the macro level. Let's start with this absolutely staggering number. The United States national debt has officially crossed $38 trillion. The U.S. government is blowing through cash faster than a bachelor party at 2 a.m. in Miami, leaving the United States with more debt than any other nation in human history. But, as we all know, borrowing isn't free, right? And the carrying cost is absolutely terrifying. We now spend $1 trillion a year just to service the interest on that debt. In fact, interest has become the fastest growing expense in the entire federal budget, rising by over 34% just the last 2 years alone. We're now shelling out $1 trillion annually just to keep the lights on and keep the debt collectors away. To put that into perspective, that means we spend more on pure interest than on vital national programs like national defense, income security, and even veterans' benefits.
Which brings us to a really crucial realization. Debt has literally become the duct tape holding the entire economy together. Because when you think about it, if Uncle Sam is out there maxing out every credit line he has, why shouldn't everyone else? Everyday Americans look at this reckless spending and essentially say, hey, that looks kind of fun. The rest of the country is quite simply following the government's playbook.
And the result of following that playbook? Well, it's this explosive number right here. Total household debt in the United States, which measures debt at the personal level, has rocketed to $18.6 trillion. That is a massive 60% explosion over the last decade, hitting an all-time record. The average American now carries over $90,000 in personal debt. So while the government is piling it up nationally, everyday citizens are quietly drowning at the household level.
But to really wrap our heads around this crisis, we need to break that $18.6 trillion down. Because obviously, not all debt is created equal. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York actually categorizes household debt into two overarching buckets: housing debt and non-housing debt. For the rest of this explainer, we're going to look at this through a classic cinematic lens, dividing it into the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Section 3. The good debt, housing, mortgages, and HELOCs.
Let's start with the good older brother of the financial family. Housing debt is split into two main types. First, you have your closed-end mortgage accounts. You know, the giant soul-crushing debt you take on just for the privilege of owning 4 walls and a roof. This makes up the vast bulk of all household debt in America, sitting right now at a record $13 trillion. Then, you have home equity revolving accounts, or HELOCs. Think of this essentially as a credit card for your house, where you leverage your home's equity. Now, HELOC balances have jumped 30% since 2021, which is the fastest rise since before the 2008 financial crisis. So yeah, that's a bit eyebrow-raising for sure, but at a modest $411 billion overall, it's not an immediate panic point. It's actually pretty stable.
Moving on to Section 4, the bad debt, student loans, the problem child. So if housing is the good older brother, what exactly sits on the other side? Let's move to and see how this builds. Look at how this problem child has evolved since 1983. College tuition has skyrocketed by more than 700%, vastly outpacing inflation and wages. And why is that? Well, because when you let 18-year-olds borrow thousands of dollars with zero credit history, no collateral, and absolutely no financial literacy, universities figure out pretty quickly they can charge whatever they want. Now check out this recent jump. Just a year ago, serious delinquencies, meaning payments 90 days or more late, were below 1%. Today, they have sharply spiked past 9%. And total student debt balances now sit at an unbelievable record of $1.7 trillion. It is just this vicious, endless cycle of tuition hikes and loan growth.
So why exactly do we categorize this as bad debt? Well, 44 million Americans currently owe an average of $37,000. But unlike a mortgage or a car loan, this debt is unsecured. You can't just sell your degree back to the university when times get tough to pay off the bank, right? Worse still, it's one of the very few types of debt that typically cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. As our source so perfectly puts it, student loans are the herpes of the finance world. They never really go away.
Section 5. The ugly debt. Credit cards. Dangerous and growing.
Okay, now this is where things get truly alarming. This is where the economic foundation of the everyday American really starts to crack. Before we even look at the balances, just look at this number. The average interest rate on credit cards right now is more than 21%. 21%. That is hovering around the highest levels ever recorded.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how that 21% interest rate is playing out in real time. Notice that 12% slice for serious delinquency? That marks the highest level of serious credit card delinquency we have seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Inflation has soared, housing costs are sitting at record highs, and wages just haven't kept up. So that 12% of users, they aren't just behind on payments. At a 21% interest rate, they are literally drowning in compound interest.
And the craziest part is, it's not just that people are swiping their existing cards like lunatics, they are opening new accounts like there's no tomorrow. The number of active credit card accounts has risen 20% since before the pandemic. We are now exceeding 600 million active accounts. Keep in mind, there are only roughly 340 million people in the US. The average American is juggling multiple cards, multiple minimum payments, and multiple financial headaches. Americans have added more credit card debt in the last 4 years than they did in the entire decade following the 2008 crisis, pushing total balances well past the $1 trillion mark.
Finally, Section 6, Financing the Present, the Buy Now, Pay Later Trap.
Just when it seemed like things couldn't possibly get any more chaotic, a shiny new illusion of consumer convenience arrived on the scene. You've undoubtedly seen the buttons at checkout. Pay in 4 installments, usually draped in whatever soft-colored friendly slogan Silicon Valley dreamed up this week. But let's walk through the actual reality of this. Step 1. It's marketed as financial empowerment, but really, it's just a slick new way to normalize debt for a totally new generation. It is credit completely disguised as convenience. Step 2. Widespread adoption. 15% of all Americans are actively using this in 2024. Step 3. The reality sets in. 40% of users experience buyer's remorse once they realize the total costs involved. And finally, Step 4. The trap closes. 24% of these users have made a late payment, which is up from the previous year. It is the exact same old credit trap, just with a much better user interface. People are literally financing their day-to-day survival, one installment plan at a time.
Which brings us to the core thesis of this entire explainer. America isn't saving for the future, it's financing the present. When you view the economy from a debt-first perspective, it suddenly stops looking like a booming success story. Every record-high stock market headline, every flashy consumer spending report, it's almost all built on borrowed money. The credit crisis isn't loud, it isn't sudden. It's quiet, it's gradual, and it is happening right in plain sight.
So everything might appear completely fine on the surface. Unemployment is low, markets are high, but underneath, the foundation is absolutely cracking under the massive weight of this debt. It's really just a giant economic game of hot potato where everyone is just hoping the music doesn't stop while they're holding the bag. So I want to leave you with this final critical question to ask yourself about your own finances. When the music finally stops on this giant economic game of hot potato, where will you be standing?